What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another Pound for Pound ATL. Free agent edition. We're moving ever closer to the draft, and, all that stuff is ramping up with pro days and things like that. But since the fallout, I guess you could say, of the Deshaun Watson saga and the Matt Ryan trade, it seems like the team has refocused or been able to refocus on the free agency market, on the guys that they're trying to bring in or talk to. So since the last time we had talked, the team has signed a few more players and talked to a few more players, and I figured might as well come on here and talk about it, address the new additions to the team, and see where we are. Ultimately, before we really get into it, I really like the strategy that Fontenot is using and deploying. He's really kind of flexing his pro personnel type muscles. That's his background, is that pro personnel. That's what he did in New Orleans for all those years. So naturally, it makes sense that that's where he's making his more savvy moves as of right now. Now, obviously, they jumped at the chance of getting Watson. We've covered that ad nauseum. Matt Ryan's been traded for a third-round pick. You can make of what you want from their press conference there, whether they did Matt Ryan a solid by taking less. However you want to spin it, they're spinning it, of course, that they did Matt Ryan a solid and not necessarily shopped him around. And for me, I'll choose to believe that because that at least makes me feel a little bit better, right? But the strategy that Fontenot is deploying is one that he used last year and we noted on. But now that we've seen it 2 years in a row, it really is starting to become like his calling card, his strategy in addressing the team and the roster. And it really seems like Fontenot does not want to be backed into a corner. And what I mean by that is, by this time of the year in the draft cycle under Thomas Dimitroff, you pretty much knew what Dimitroff was going to do. You knew, you may not have known exactly the person he was going to pick, but take the year we drafted A.J. Terrell, the last year Dimitroff was here. We all knew he was taking a cornerback. Now, we didn't know exactly which one it was going to be, but we knew he was taking a cornerback because he had backed himself into a corner. Right before the draft starts, he cuts Desmond Trufant and left a big gaping hole at corner. Do you think year before that, he tried to be slick, but he painted himself into a corner by the offensive lineman that he signed. He ended up double dipping at O-line with Lindstrom and McGarry. So that does not seem to be Fontenot's strategy. Fontenot seems to not want to back himself into a corner, paint himself into a corner. He wants to have options. And obviously that starts right at the top with signing Marcus Mariota. Now, Mariota, a former second overall pick, I think it was 7 years ago, is a decent starter at this point in his career. Now, we're going to see if he gets a chance to be a reclamation project, but what the presence of Mariota gives you is you're not forced into drafting a quarterback. You feel good about Mariota being your starter. I mean, Arthur Blank said as much today in his press conference at the owners' meeting. So that was number one right there. And I thought that was a good get on their part. A, highly athletic quarterback, which definitely seems to be what Arthur Smith is going after. I mean, Trey Lance, Deshaun Watson, Ryan Tannehill, and now, Mariota back again. So there definitely seems to be a type there that Arthur Smith wants to use. So it's good that they went out and got it, so you're not forced into drafting a quarterback at 8. Now, I'm not saying that they're not going to. They still very well could. If the guy they love is there at 8, then they'll probably take him. But it's not again, I keep using the same words, but it's not a must. It's not a have to. Now, it's not just the quarterback position. Up to this point, we were like very concerned, like we had no pass catchers. I even, made a comment, talking about Mariota to Zacchaeus for a 2-yard gain. Because that's what it seemed like. Because up till yesterday, I believe it was, you had Olamide Zacchaeus, Frank Darby, and Cordarrelle Hodge. Now, that's a name we haven't heard before. Cordarrelle Hodge, I kind of made a joke when we initially signed him. If any of y'all are familiar with old TV, Daryl and my other brother Daryl. Now we have Cordarrelle Hodge and Cordarrelle Patterson, which was kind of, I don't know, I found it amusing. Y'all may not find it amusing. Anyway, but Cordarrelle is, 5'11", 183 pounds, and has a career total of 430 yards. He doesn't move the needle. Not at all. And when I first signed him, I was like, this can't be it. You can't roll into the draft decimated at wide receiver like we are. Fontenot come out and addressed it. There was reports talking about they were going to be aggressive in the draft, which really went against the BPA mantra that had been going around. So I was really interested to see how this was going to initially play out. And to yesterday, about this time, the Atlanta Falcons announced that they signed Auden Tate, formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, this was a name that had been swirling around the Twitterverse, swirling around, Falcons chat. I got to, toss out my boy Grits Blitz on Twitter. He had been banging that drum for Auden Tate since February, really, talking about he would be a good fit for Arthur's scheme. And there's no lie there, because at 6'5", 228, he is that big physical wide receiver. He's a contested catch guy, not necessarily fast. PFF had him at a plus run blocker, meaning that he was well into the 60s in their grading scale for the vast majority of his career. Now, the biggest problem with Tate is he has a tough time staying healthy. He only played 7 games last season, and I think has only played 12 games one time in his career. So he's never played a full season. So they're betting on maybe that he finally gets to be healthy. But keep in mind, all these signings are 1-year deals. They're 1-year prove-it deals, a lot like Patterson last year. So they're not committing too much to these guys. And if we have another Patterson, whether it be Auden Tate, whether it be Hodges, then, we have the money next year to re-sign them. Now, keeping going with the offensive aspect, we signed Damon Williams. Now, he's a running back that have familiarity with Ryan Pace. I've been joking on Twitter that we've become in the Bears South now with a lot of their coaching staff and the former GM in our organization. It's only natural that they bring in people that they're familiar with. And Damon Williams, a 5'11", 225-pound back, is definitely that. He had 40 attempts with 164 yards and 2 touchdowns last season. So it's a little over, it's close to 5 yards a carry. He seems to be more of a, third down pass catching back, to the tune of, used well in Kansas City. And again, another guy who's been hurt. If he can stay healthy, he can be a productive back. And it's a nice, little pickup, for the Falcons, who are really kind of playing money ball in a sense, as far as buying low with high reward. Okay. Damon Williams is a proven back in this league, proven as in he can be a productive member of a backfield. Now, along with that, we re-signed Quadre Olison. Now that's interesting. Now, that doesn't mean much because, they brought him back last year and still didn't use him a ton. So it was good to see him back, good to see him, choosing to come back. He must have not have had a real good market. Nevertheless, he's a back I really like, and I think if given another year in this system, he was a productive back at 5 yards a carry. I think he could do really well for us if given the opportunity, even though I felt like I said the same thing last year. So we'll see. Right now, our backfield consists of Cordarrelle Patterson, Mike Davis, Damon Williams, and Quadre Olison, along with Caleb Huntley on a futures deal. So if this holds true, it'll be interesting to see if they draft a back. But again, they're not painting themselves into a corner. They don't go into the draft having to draft a back. If a guy that they absolutely love falls into their lap, let's say like a Kenneth Walker or a Breece Hall, maybe they pull the trigger. All right, keeping it moving. We are talking now, moving a little bit to the defensive side of the ball. We signed Lorenzo Carter, 6'5", 255 pounds. I think he just is 26 years old. This is a great signing, in my opinion. He's a guy that moves the needle a lot for me. Young, athletic, trying to, he got caught up in a regime change up there in New York. So comes back home, hometown kid, as far as where he went to college at. He had 5 sacks last year, 4 sacks a couple seasons early in his career. So you're really hoping that he can get into that, 7 to 8 sack range in the way that Dean Pease likes to use him. He's now, like I said, athletic, plus run defender. I think he's going to give you, at minimum, he's going to give you what Dante Fowler gave you last year at a fraction of the price. But I think he has a chance to be a late bloomer and really showcase his skills here. We re-signed Eric Harris. I don't know how many of y'all are super excited about that. As my guy Toby said, Harris is a guy that when he's on, he can get some picks and he can get some turnovers. He started playing well towards the end of the season, I think, as he got familiar with this scheme. And depending on, or following up on what Arthur Smith said in his press conference today, makes sense if they're still hoping for a big jump from Richie Grant from year 1 to year 2. So bringing Eric Harris back gives you a safety that is at least played decent in this system. As I stated, he played going down the stretch. Now, some of the more interesting names that we haven't necessarily talked about because they've been here just visiting so far. We haven't really signed any of them, but it lets you know where this regime is going, or at least where they're looking, and that's to get to be more physical. They brought in Rashaan Evans on a visit. We'll see if he signs. Hopefully he does. A former first-round pick of the Titans who had his best years under Dean Pease. So that's really interesting there. It was a guy that a lot of us were kind of pining for. They also brought in Kimiko Turi. I think I said that right. Pass rusher out of Indy. Second-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. They brought him in on a visit. Really nice piece. Love to add him to the defensive line rotation. He had 5 sacks last year, and I think he's another guy who you might be able to get in low, and if he balls out, you can sign him longer next year when we have more cap space. Now, speaking of signing people longer, a report came out that we're still working on a Grady Jarrett extension, and it sounds like the ball is in his court. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out, because if Grady Jarrett doesn't want to sign an extension here, if he's not believing in this rebuild, when Arthur Smith pretty much said today that he's not necessarily a scheme fit, but they love him anyway, then I wonder if they trade him. That's something we've been talking about. It's not a popular opinion to have, but it's an opinion nonetheless. one thing I want to say that I want to see out of this regime that will make me more confident about it is the idea of trying to set us up for the future. That's what good teams really do. That's what the New Englands do. That's what Baltimore does. Like, Baltimore has made an art out of the compensatory picks. I don't think you were going to, the way the formula worked out, I don't think you were going to salvage one from Foye. But if, you could start looking towards the future, if a guy doesn't want to re-sign here, yeah, it may hurt to lose him, but at least try to get something for him, right? Get something in return. Don't just let him walk out the door like we have done in the past. So that's the one nugget that I wonder if gets resolved before free agents or before the draft hits at the end of next month. But yeah, man, this has been an interesting period to see how Fontenot and them are reshaping this roster. They don't want to call it a rebuild. I understand that in a sense. They don't want to say the words, but it's a rebuild by default. You came into this year with 29 guys on your roster, and you cut a handful of them, watched a few of them walk away, and traded away your franchise quarterback. It's not, I mean, it's a rebuild. So they can call it a transition all they want to, but I do like the signings that they are making. They are truly seems like they're trying to make this a more physical team, like a truly physical team, not a fast and physical team, but a truly physical team. It looks like they want to grind you into submission. I've been doing a lot of research on the offensive scheme itself, and I'm probably going to put that video out after the draft because I kind of want to get a real good look at what this roster is going to look like. But yeah, that's all I got for you today. Keep an eye on the channel as always. We go live next week on Tuesday. I'm sure either Toby or maybe Adam will be maybe putting out a video later on this week. But I just wanted to touch on these free agent signings because it's super interesting to see what the Falcons are doing and how they're going about their business. I like it. I don't know how quickly it's going to produce a contender, but I do like how they're going about it. As always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Grim1128, GRIMM1128. And as always, Falcons fans, rise up.